What's up, beautiful people? It is me, EL, your favorite dyslexic book nerd. And today, y'all, I got an amazing guest with me. I can't wait to get into talking about this amazing book I just got done reading. And so I'm going to let him introduce himself to y'all. So here we go. Please introduce yourself to my peoples.
Sure. Hi, my name is Thomas Lee, and I am the author of the Miseducation of Thomas Lee Crockett, a mental health love letter to the Black community, which is coming out June the 30th, 2026, through my publisher, Wild Press.
Whoop, whoop. Hey, y'all heard that June 30th. Y'all need to go out and grab that book. Y'all need to grab one for yourself. You need to grab one for your homie. You need to grab one for your boo thing. All right? Just grab three off the rip. Thank you so much for sitting down with me so we could talk about the book. Like I was saying before we started, that at first I was apprehensive, right, when I got the book, and I was like, mental health therapist, this gonna be like, it's gonna be like reading something going to school. And it was definitely not that. Like, it was way more than I expected. And I just, like, from page one to the last page, I was just like speechless, in awe, um just all the things, right? And so my first question would be, like, you described the book as a mental health love letter to the Black community. Why did you choose that framing rather than a traditional, like, clinical guidebook type thing?
Okay, so I'll break down the name just to kind of give you context and where everything comes from. So, one of my favorite albums, well, my favorite album of all time is the Miseducation of Lauren Hill. That's like a timeless classic. Their album is something I go back and visit like every 2 months or so. And so I remember hearing the album and just hearing her talk about her experiences and like the whole theme of the album where you see like she kind of started saying like what she missed class today, where talking about these whole themes of love and all this other stuff. And so these are some lessons that she didn't get that day. And then she sang the songs about her experience in life and love. And I kind of use this book as a way to kind of talk a little bit about like lessons that I missed because primarily there were some things growing up that my parents didn't have within themselves to give me, a little black gay boy. And I can't necessarily fault my parents for what they didn't have. And so there were some lessons that I missed that I had to go into the world and kind of pick up for myself. And so I got some inspiration from that album to kind of like name the first part of my book, Step. Then the second part of the name of my book comes from Shea Coulee from season 5 of Drag Race All Stars. Well, sorry, yes, I'm sorry. Drag Race All Stars season 5 when Shea Coulee had competed. And I had remembered she was giving her final runway, and then the judge had asked her a little bit about her drag, what was the inspiration for it, and she said something so beautiful and elegant. And she like, my drag is a love letter to black women, where she wanted black women to kind of see themselves reflected in her drag, and I thought that was so beautiful because she's doing for showing them love. And for me, I kind of feel like as a black community, especially being someone who was a clinically trained black therapist, I often felt like this field does not give us enough love. And I wanted to really write a book just saying like, hey, I see you, this is for you. Because historically, when you think about therapist books, like you said, snooze fest, it's boring, but those books are primarily centered around white people. And
Yes.
black people cannot see themselves in that. And so I want to write something specifically where they can see themselves in these diagnoses and these stories and see how these things can show up in everyday life and begin to develop that language. And so this was specifically for them because historically we haven't left out the conversation. Historically, when we do go to therapy, there's always this cultural gap or disconnect between the therapist and the black community. And I wanted to sit there and say specifically, this is a love letter to you because you are my focus. I want to give you attention.
I love it. I love it. Um, I really connected with the parts where you shared about your father, and like that really hit home for me a lot because I I I had a similar relationship with my father, right? And so it 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 took me a lot of years to navigate um loving him and also not liking him very much, right? Because of uh the way he chose to parent. And I understand now as an adult he parented that way because he didn't know any other way, right? What did it take to be that vulnerable in writing that, right?
Have to kind of sit and think about it. It was a lot of therapy, maturing and growing up. And so, because I kind of feel like when you are a child and you're dealing with a parent and you kind of like want them to meet certain needs or certain stuff like this and that, due to like the due to like you still being like a person whose brain still developing, whose life experience is still developing, you don't really understand everything that comes with being an adult. And then once you kind of actually get into the real world and become an adult, you kind of realize like, damn, this is hard. And in my case, it's kind of like, okay, this is very, very hard. I can only imagine trying to sit here and go through this whole adulting stuff and then be a parent trying to raise somebody, especially when, say, for example, as much as people want to sit here and give like guidebooks to parenting and all this other stuff, there's not really one specific guidebook because you just never know the little person that you're gonna get. They can have a different type of personality, different type of style, and you may not have the tools necessarily to kind of sit and give them what they need. And so I think it was me kind of come to a realization that like I was probably a different child than what my father expected. So he couldn't give me those things that I probably needed because number one, he didn't have those tools. And then now, as I'm talking more and more to my dad, like me and my dad talk like every other day, and he's like my best friend now. And so I'm realizing now that like my dad, there's just certain things that he didn't understand and certain things that he didn't get because his parents didn't give them to him. So I cannot expect him to give me something when he didn't have it. And so I think it's getting to a point of where I've accepted that that was my reality, and that allowed me to let go of some of that anger and some of the disdain that I had for my dad because I felt like my dad had failed me in so many ways. But then I had to kind of realize he did the best he could with what he got, with what he had. And so I get that there were some things that I wanted and I needed, but again, I can't sit here and withdraw from an empty account. And I think it was just pretty much realizing that, which allowed me to kind of work through and accept that, and then to kind of display that level of vulnerability within the book. Because I can recognize the reality where it's like, yeah, you failed me, but at the same time, too, you didn't have the skill. So two things can be true at once. And so just accepting that, being able to give that vulnerability, it made it a little bit more easy for me.
Mm, duh, 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 duh. So how did you? I guess this reason. How so? How did you balance your clinical expertise and the vulnerable side in writing the book?
I think that's why I kind of like broke the chapters up into two parts.
Right.
I wanted to make sure that like the clinical information does not get overshadowed by the vulnerability part, which is why within the chapter, but initially when I like yeah, my editor still got it in the book where it's like part A and part B, but it's all one chapter. And so with the part A, I focus solely on the clinical just to kind of give you specific information that you may need to know about the diagnosis or the paraclinical terms. And then in part B, I sit down and I write the vulnerable stuff while also still explaining to you some clinical terms, but there's the part where I'm vulnerable. And so I think it was like that little separation of like, for lack of better words, person safe. It kind of allowed me to kind of give it to you in that form where necessarily the vulnerable stuff is not completely overpowering the clinical stuff.
And I gotta say that even in the clinical part versus the layman's part, I still didn't feel like I didn't understand the clinical part, because you broke it down in such a way that just the average guy like myself could still understand and still be engaged. So um that was impressive and new for me, because usually, like I say, when you read a book that's based or has something to do with clinical terms or this type of conversation, that is usually like all clinical, and it's a bunch of words I don't understand, and yeah, no. But even in that part of the book, I still was able to understand what you were saying and tap into some things that I probably hadn't unpacked or thought about in a very long time. So I appreciate that so much.
Thank you
What's
for that.
my question? The book explicitly addresses navigating a world full of racism, homophobia, and white supremacy. How does the intersection of these forces uniquely impact the mental health of the black community, and how does your book offer a roadmap for protecting your own sanity in that environment?
Okay, so let me take a minute before I kind of answer and kind of process that.
Okay.
Okay, you give me the question one more time.
Okay. Okay. All right. I could break it down. I could break it
Okay,
down. Okay.
please, please.
So, all right. So the book addresses racism and homophobia.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Um, and white supremacy. How does that uniquely impact the mental health of the black community? We'll go with that part. And then the second question will be, how does your book offer a roadmap for protecting your own sanity in that environment?
Okay, so I often say when it comes down to black mental health, I gotta explain to people that as black people in general, we all got trauma. We are born into it. So I like to tell people like, let's go back to slavery. This was something that lasts for 400 years. So let's sit here and talk about exactly what happened once slavery was over. So our ancestors were was enslaved, in chains. In chains. They worked against their will. They were beat. They were raped. They had their families separated. They were just basic property, and this went on for 400 years. And then all of a sudden, they got told, "Okay, this is over. Now get out." And so now all these people who have just been enslaved and have experienced all this severe trauma, now they got this freedom, and now they're being told to rebuild their lives. But yet they're not getting any resources. We didn't get the 40 acres in the league. We didn't get therapy. We didn't get any of that stuff. So guess what ends up happening? Those free slaves then went on to try to build a life. They didn't take the chance. Sorry, they didn't get the opportunity to get their trauma treated because that is some severe stuff. Being enslaved and being like going from property to now I'm a person, but not really. But I still got to deal with the stuff that comes with being black in the world. And so they didn't go get therapy. So there was a lot of unchecked trauma. And then there was also so how parenting typically works is parents gonna parent their child based off their experience. So if I am just this white man's property and this is their world, blah 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 blah, I'm probably gonna parent my child from their perspective. And so then it gets passed on so on and so on and so on and so on and so on. And that's how we kind of get in the position that we're in today, where basically a lot of people have a lot of unchecked trauma. And then on top of that, due to the stigma that comes to being within therapy, a lot of us will not go. And that the thing that becomes very, very difficult because what people fail to realize is, as Black people, we are put into a very precarious position. I feel like no matter where you go in the world, the one thing that's constant is people hate it for Black people. People have no problem coming into our culture, taking from it, and disrespecting the people. And it's something that we all experience and have to go through on a daily basis. Because maybe we work in a place of where they may not value our ideas or how we feel or may not respect us and all that stuff. Those things can really make you feel less than a human being or a person. And so we were basically born into a society that basically treated us like second class citizens. And there is some type of trauma and anxiety that comes from it. So with this book, I try to highlight how this can show up in everyday life. In certain places, like in certain pockets, like your workplace, especially if you live in like, sorry, especially if you work like in a predominantly white space, it can come up so much. Or even something as even in our educational system, access to healthcare, because race does play a role in this. And so, trying to highlight how this comes up in our day to day life is what I try to do with the book. And then I also try to say, like, say, for example, like if I'm worried about the little microaggression that someone's going to do to me at work, then maybe I may be so focused on that as opposed to my work, you may not realize the anxiety. But in the book, I try to highlight things like that to give it a name because if you have that awareness, you can begin to try to address it. And that was the purpose of this book to try to give people the tools and the language to become aware so they can begin to address it. Because as Black people, we have a very, very unique experience. And sometimes, again, use my father as an example. My father couldn't tell me what like he couldn't tell me what anxiety was because he didn't have the tools. And a lot of our parents or the people that came before us did not have a language because they were not given therapy and they had stigma around therapy. This book aims to give you the language in a way that is palatable so that a Black reader can understand it and begin their mental health journey by becoming more aware and starting to address it.
I love it. All right. Da, da, da. Okay, so I was reading a blog post on uh Wilding's Press, and you said um write drunk, edit sober, and how did that philosophy or any other unique writing habits help you navigate the heavy emotional labor of writing this book?
So right drunk, like it is sober. Because like sometimes it's like you like a little shot of courage to kind of get through it, or sometimes like as a way to kind of ease the pain. So I know like with a lot of writers, not ease the pain, but like ease the tension and the anxiety. I feel like with a lot of writers, they get in their head about exactly what to write, how to blah 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 blah. And the thing is like this, it's just putting it on paper to kind of get your thoughts out and to kind of start having some organization. And then once you kind of get this out, that's why I say you go back sober to do your editing. Because now it's like I got the material out and now we try to redefine it and clean it up and make it palatable and presentable for a full length book. If that makes sense.
Makes sense. Da, da, da. Do, 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 do. Your publisher, Wilding Press. I hope I'm saying that right. Am I saying that right?
Wilding.
Wilding
Wilding.
Press.
Yeah, WILDLING. Yeah,
Yes,
Wilding.
Wilding Press
Mm-hmm.
emphasizes community-driven stories. How does how did that influence? How did that influence, or did it influence, um, you going with them? And also, how did it influence the final version of your book?
So I really enjoyed my publisher and it was really a collaborative effort. And so I kind of felt like when I initially went into this, I didn't really feel like the goal. I remember, well, with it, I remember going into the first meeting and I had told them the vision for my book. I gave them where I began with this book, like my acceptance of it, where I see it going, all this other stuff I told in my vision. And I didn't see people trying to mold my vision to what they thought it could be. I thought people like, okay, so you want to go there? How do we help you get there? And then through the editing process, my editors, who again they are Caucasian people, they were very very sensitive when it came down to my story and my voice because I kind of think that they wanted me, my voice, and all this other stuff, and so they didn't try to overly infringe upon it. And they knew that fine line between, hey, I know the editorial role, what to look for, blah, 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 this and that. So I'm going to speak to that for certain things or certain issues, whatever. We want to hear your voice or like cultural things. They gave me the space to kind of like, speak my feelings and all this other stuff and kind of come with that part. So I kind of felt it was a collaborative effort. So I appreciated my publisher for basically providing me with space and working with me. And as I was kind of going through this process, it was like, okay, how do we strengthen your work, detail it so it can actually reach the people that you're trying to reach. And they really had me focus a little bit more on the storytelling. Like those things. I'm like, okay, this is great because there were things that I did not know. Because, like, to be honest with you, this was my first book that I ever wrote. And I wrote this book initially, I think, like within 3 months.
Ooh.
Yeah. And so it's like, okay, boom. But then they made me go back. They made me focus a little bit more on the storytelling to go a little bit deep. And then, and I had to remember that in this whole process, they wanted me to, they offered me the deal because they liked my voice. Let me kind of lean into that and then so they don't water it down. And they gave me the space. And then if we had like any conflicting ideas, I could speak to kind of give them an understanding about why this is important and vice versa. And I really enjoyed that collaborative effort. And so it really did feel like very meaningful.
It came out very well, I must say, for it to be your first book. So it's your first book. Could we say now you got the writing bug and we might get some more books in the future?
Yeah. I got to start working on the second book right now. And because I was working on it and then my computer died and took the finished copy of it.
Oh my God.
But it's okay. It's okay. It is all right. It is okay because I kind of feel like everything happened for a reason. And then what's really funny is I had actually finished the first book. I think a little bit before I started writing. Sorry, I had finished the second book a little bit before I had started rewriting the first one.
Mm.
And after going through the experiences with my publishers and my editors, it really gave me a different perspective on writing. And so now I know exactly how to go back and like, okay, so what story you trying to tell, how you trying to build it out. So I'm kind of glad that it happened because now I can take the knowledge and experience that I have gained and put this into this second novel.
Okay, okay, because my heart had dropped for you right then. I was like, oh, but that I like that. That makes sense. That's what's up. Let's see. If a reader takes only one thing away from reading the Miseducation of Thomas Lee Crockett, what would you want it to be?
Mental health as well. I want it to be don't start late. So let's try to work on getting the tools and knowledge as early as possible, even if you don't have access to healthcare. The whole purpose of this book is to kind of sit you and provide a low compensated job to people who may not have access to a therapist right away, or those people who may still be reluctant to go, but still want to try to begin trying to do some work on their own before they kind of actually go. And so I'm hoping that the book touches the hands of people and it just begins to just start a little, like, even if it just plants a seed that continues to grow, that's the goal. Just for you to kind of continue to go down this whole little path of like developing and cultivating your mental health.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and this has been awesome. I appreciate you. The book comes out June 30th. Make sure y'all go pick it up wherever you pick your books up at, local, online, wherever y'all need to grab that.
Right.
Where could the people find you?
Well, I was gonna say, so my publisher has already put the pre-order link up for the book. So if you go to Amazon, Target, Barnes and Noble, you can pre-order your book today. And so if you want to find me on my social, my name is Sorely Miseducated Thomas. I have my TikToks and my Instagram. And so that's where you can find me. And then I also have my website on PayPal, and it's called Creativo Negro. And so on there you get like my bio, you get you get an idea about the work that I do, because I do offer training where I try to teach people about, like, like trauma. Let's learn about the complexities of trauma. Let's learn about racial identity, sexual identity, and I also teach. I also give trainings on how to be the ally to the Black QIA plus community. I give those trainings, and I also provide people with a therapist consultation service where I will sit down with you and help you find a therapist in your area and show you how to utilize your insurance, and then also help you identify what type of therapy is going to be best for you by trying to identify exactly what you're looking for, what triggers you, and all those other things. So all this can be found on my website on PayPal, which is creationegro.com, which is KREATIVONERGO.com.
Awesome. All right, y'all got it. All right. So before we get out of here, I often say that my sister always tells me that words mean things. So here we do a thing where I want to know one word you would pick to leave with my readers, and why that word until the next time we see you.
Grow. And the reason why I say the word grow is because I feel like life is an ever evolving growing process. So even when you think you have reached your ultimate evolved form, whether you get in this life to be 50, 60, or 70, you can still learn things about yourself. And life can sit here and give you experiences where you can still learn things about yourself that make you grow and evolve. So always being open to that growth process, because that's how we survive this ever changing landscape that's in front of us.
I dig it. All right, y'all. Y'all know the drill. In the meantime, in between time, y'all do your boy a favor and go read a book. All right. Let me hit the end.